It was a bright sunny morning, Saturday in fact. The skies were blue, there was not a cloud in sight. And across the desert and the mesas, you could hear the roar of engines, largely Lightning McQueen's engine as he was tearing around the track practicing. He was very happy that day because the day before he'd managed to sit down and get his very own drone license. It was the first time that he'd had anything like that. Well, you know, Sally encouraged him, and so did Doc. Doc said, Lightning, you can do it. You know how to drive. You know how to drive a car. You know how to do racing. And flying a drone, why, that's going to be easy. You've just got to study hard. And you've got to know all the rules. Gee, said Lightning McQueen, where am I going to find the rules? Well, said Doc, you have to go and look at the Federal Aviation Authority, the FAA. They have all the rules listed and all the things that you have to know. You have to know about the machine. You have to know about weather, meteorology. You have to know about, well, how to read maps. You have to know the rules of the road for the air, in fact, the rules of the air. Well, of course, Lightning was really intrigued with that, and he thought, yes, I can do it. I can do it. And he'd studied very hard, and when he took the test, guess what happened? He passed with flying colors. He was so happy, he said, I've got to call Connor because I've got my drone license too. Well, he phoned up Connor, and Connor was just getting ready to have lunch. But of course, he stopped having lunch to have a word with his very good friend, Lightning McQueen. And Lightning McQueen told him all about it. He said, you know, Connor, I'm just like you. I got my drone license. Well, Connor said, congratulations. So they spent a little bit of time talking about what the different regulations were between the US and Canada. And they were pretty much the same. But boy, Lightning McQueen was so happy. Well, that's why he was in such a good mood. And you could hear him tearing around the track. Well, he was just getting ready to leave the track when up came Sally. And she was so worried. She said, Lightning, there's a big problem. We've got a real mess on our hands. What's happened? Well, a couple of hours ago, Mather went off looking for some of his favorite prickly pear cactuses. He loves eating them. And he likes selling them too at the market. Well, he's been gone for hours. We don't know where he is. Well, Doc happened to come by and said, well, it looks like you've got your first job now. McQueen, Lightning, you've got to get up there and you've got to find where Mather is. He's either lost or maybe he's in big trouble. But you're going to be able to sit down and find out what happens. Well, Lightning was a little bit nervous because this was his first big job, but he knew it was very important because he wanted to help us find his friend Mather. Maybe there was a problem. Maybe he was stuck out in the desert and he'd blown a gasket and he was out there just parched. Well, he turned around and he said, okay, here we go. He got out the drone. He made sure it had and it was a big drone too. It was a Mavic 3 and had 48 minutes of flight time. Is that what they have?
46 minutes.
Okay. Well, Lightning started his drone up, or did he become the drone? Which do you want?
I'd like him to start the drone up and...
Okay, so he flies the drone,
Yes.
He doesn't become the drone.
No.
Okay. Okay, so here he was. He started the drone up. Sally was watching, and so was Doc. And they were very, very interested in how it went. And you could hear the... and it lifted up. And it was at eye level. And then Lightning said, okay, we're going to go up to 400 feet above ground level. Well, they were already up on the top of the side of a mountain looking down over the mesa, so going up another 400 feet, that would be really great. They'd be able to see a long way. So up he went. Well, he flew to the west and he flew to the north and then he flew to the south and then he flew to the east. And then he thought, wait a minute, I've got to get more organized with the way I'm doing this. I'm going to have to do a box perimeter search. What's that? Said Sally. Well, that's where I sit down and I pick out an area and I go one side of a box from north to south and then other side from east to west and then other side from south to north and the other side from west to east, and that way I go all the way around and I don't see anything in there. Then I move down to the next one. That's a very good idea, said Sally. Well, he flew and he flew and he flew, and he actually had to bring bring back the drone because it was running out of energy, but he had more batteries all ready to go and he popped them in. By this time everybody in the village was worried about what happened to Mather, and they were all interested in the search. Well, it was even to the point where one of them was suggested that they go and get the search and rescue, but they knew it would be a long time before search and rescue could get there because they had to become all the way from Phoenix, and that was over 600 miles. They'd never get there in time before nightfall, and they didn't want Mather out there in the middle of the night with the coyotes howling and the various rattlesnakes going, and the Gila monsters are going gilly, 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 gilly. Yes, and the desert rats going, and all the little animals going, and they knew Mather would be very scared, and oh, I would be so worried if Mather was scared, and he didn't like being out in the dark. He liked being dark times. He wanted to be in his garage. Well, lightning charged up the batteries, got up in the air again, and he went out again. And this time he searched for another 46 minutes. No luck, he had to come back again. He went up for a third time. Well, this time everybody was getting a little concerned. But guess what? He was just at the 36th minute of the last one, and he flew over the edge of a cliff, and he could see that down off the cliff, about 50 feet down, there was Mather, upside down, caught between two rocks. He'd driven off the edge, or something, the ledge had broken, and he'd fallen over, and he couldn't get out. Well, first thing, lightning went down, and we got the drone and went right down close to Mather, and he could see that even though Mather was upside down, he could still look. Mather said, "Help, help," and just to let Mather know that he understood, lightning made the drone bob up and down. Yes, yes, yes. Go and get some help. Yes, yes. And off he flew. Well, this time he knew exactly where to fly to, and he got home in good time. And guess what? Doc and Lightning and Sally. Is there anybody else in the story that we should include?
I don't know.
They all got together and they formed a convoy, and led by Lightning saying, "Come on now, we'll follow the drone." Up went the drone, and he flew the drone on the coordinates that he knew that would get them to where Mather was, and they drove. It was starting to get a little bit dark, but there was still light outside, and they drove through the dust to the edge of the cliff and stopped and looked down. And Mather said, "I'm so glad to see you. Thank goodness you're here. I was getting worried I'd be out all night long. And besides, it gets cold out here, and it would get very, very, there would be dew all over me, and I'd get even rustier than I was. I don't want to get any rustier than I was." "Well, you just hold on there," Doc said. "We'll get you out in no time. But how are we going to do it?" "Well," said Sally, "I know what to do. We'll get a very long rope, and we'll winch him out." "How can we do that?" said Lightning. "Well, I have a special winch in the back of my car tied to my bumper, and I can sit down and I'll put it in gear, and we'll be able to sit down and wench him up. Well, Lightning was very happy to hear that, and so was Mather, because he was saying, I was getting so worried, but I knew my friends would come and save me. Well, with Doc's help, they sat down and they guided the rope over the edge, but they couldn't get it down to tie onto the bumper, the front bumper of Mather. And then Lightning McQueen got a stroke. He said, I know what to do. We'll get the drone to tie it on. You think you can do that? Well, I'm a certified drone license flyer. I know how to operate the tools. And besides, with my Mavic 3, there's a special device. It's a grapple hook, and we can use it as mechanical arms. There's 2 of them there. Well, everybody was so relieved. Well, over the drone went, and down it went, carrying the end of the rope. And when it got down within about 2 feet of where Mather was, the arms went out, grabbed the end of the rope, hooked it under the bumper, went around, and tied a bowline knot on it, which sailors use. It's a very tight knot for lifting heavy objects. And Lightning lifted the drone out of the way, and then they turned around and said, come on now, we'll have to pull this guy up, said Sally. Well, Lightning tried pulling him up, but it wasn't enough. And then Doc said, I'll tow you and we'll do it in tandem. And Doc got in behind and hooked bumpers on, and they both tried to pull. Well, they nearly got Mather up and tipped over again, but they couldn't quite do it. And then Sally said, well, I'll help too. And she got in line and she tied her bumper to the back of Doc's bumper. And they pulled and they pulled. It started to lift, and they finally flipped it over. Well, there he was, right side up, but he was still down off the edge of the cliff. But he was feeling so much better, and so was everybody, because they figured, well, we've got him this far. I'm sure we can get the rest of the way down. In the meantime, Doc had been looking around and said, hey, Mather, if you go a little bit to the west, and see over there, there's a ledge. If you can get there, why, there's a very easy slope getting up. Well, Mather, of course, hadn't been looking around where he was going, and he didn't know that. But he put his engine in gear, and even though he was all beat up and rusty, and he was going squeak, 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 because one of his wheels was out of alignment, he was able to get up onto the ledge and drove over the side of the ledge, and then there it was. There was a nice slope coming up all the way to the top of the cliff. Well, as soon as he was on that slope, he was up. He got to the top, but he was so beat up. They had to take a break. By this time it was starting to get late. Well, Mather said, I think I can make it back, but I think I'd like to get a tow. Well, you're usually the one that's giving us a tow. Yes, well, I've got an idea, said Sally. How about if we hooked his hook up to you, Doc, and he can go into neutral, and you can drive him backwards all the way, pulling him back to the garage. And that's what they did. They sat down, Lightning went ahead with his bright lights on, and Sally followed behind to make sure that everything was on, and they formed a little rescue convoy. And, well, everybody in town was waiting. They didn't know what was going on, but pretty soon they saw lights coming up over the edge and coming down the mountain. They saw 4 sets of lights, and one of them seemed to be backwards. Well, they held their breath and said, did they make it? Did they save him? Well, within about 5 minutes' time, they could see that there coming into town was Doc. And sure enough, he was pulling Mather, and behind him was Lightning McQueen. Well, Lightning McQueen had gone all the way to the back to make sure that Mather was okay, because they knew that he was in town, and once he was in town, they didn't need to have his bright lights on. There were street lights. He'd gone around to see, Mather, are you okay? And he'd been talking to Sally, and Sally said, he's pretty tired, but I think he's going to be okay. Well, we'll get him into the garage and we'll have him fixed up in no time, said Doc. Well, everybody in the town cheered and cheered, and they waved their flags, and they started whistling and hooting and shouting and jumping up and down and waving, and all the little kids were running around, and they were so glad that the rescue party had worked. Doc went over and he opened up his garage door, and there, squeakity, 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 squeak, in rolled Doc, and in rolled Mather. "Well," said Doc, "it's been a long day, and I think you need some rest, but the first thing in the morning, we're going to get you up on the hoist, and we're going to get you as good as we can get you." "Well," said Mather, "that's fantastic. I really like it." "Well," said Doc, "all thanks goes to Lightning, who had his drone license, and he got it with flying colors, and he got it the first time he tried it, and because of that, he was able to save the day." Well, everybody cheered for Doc, and everybody cheered for Lightning. And Lightning said, "Aw, shucks, wasn't nothing." But the first thing he did, when the garage door was closed, was he went over to the hotel, the TP Hotel, and he phoned his friend Connor and said, "Connor, guess what?" And he told him all about it. Well, Connor was just so delighted. And he said,
sure was.
And he said to Lightning, "Lightning, I knew you could do it. I had trust in you. I had confidence you could do it." "I did too," said Lightning. And that's the end of the story.
Excellent.
Okay. This is a story about a fierce bad rabbit. This is a fierce bad rabbit. Look at his savage whiskers and his claws and his turned up tail. This is a nice gentle rabbit. His mother has given him a carrot. The bad rabbit would like some carrot. He doesn't say please, he takes. He pushes aside the nice rabbit. And then he reaches the good rabbit and scratches it. The good rabbit creeps away and hides in his hole. He feels sad. This is a man with a gun. Uh-oh. He sees something sitting on the bench. He thinks it's a funny bird. He comes creeping up behind the trees. And he shoots. Bang! This is what happens. Carrot goes flying. Bunny goes flying. All he finds is his bench. When he rushes to up with his gun, he finds the hat that the rabbit had on and the carrot left behind. The good rabbit peeps out of his hole, and the bad rabbit is tearing past without any tail or whiskers. Oh no, the end. Now this series is called The Story of Miss Moppet. It was a short story. This is a pussy called Miss Moppet. She thinks she has heard a mouse. This is the mouse peeping out from behind the cupboard and making fun of Miss Moppet. He is not afraid of a kitten. This is Miss Moppet jumping up just too late. She misses the mouse and hits her head. Oop! She thinks it's a very hard cupboard. The mouse watches Miss Moppet from the top of the cupboard. Miss Moppet ties up her head in a duster and sits before the fire. Her head is sore and she thinks it will bandage it. The mouse thinks she's looking very ill. He comes sliding down the bell pull. Now, back in the time when they had houses with servants in, they would call the servants by having a bell. And they'd pull on a cord and it would make the bell go back and forth. And the cord would go up into the room where the servant was staying, and they'd hear the bell ring, 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 and then he'd come down. Miss Moppet is looking worse and worse. The mouse comes a little nearer. Miss Moppet hauls her poor head in her paws. She looks through a hole in the duster. The mouse is very close. All of a sudden, Miss Moppet jumps upon the mouse. And because the mouse has teased Miss Moppet thinks she will tease the mouse, which is not at all nice of Miss Moppet. She ties him up in the duster and tosses it about like a ball. But she forgot about the hole in the duster, and when she untied it, there was no mouse. He'd wriggled out and run away and is dancing a jig on the top of the cupboard. The end. Well, that was another short one, wasn't it? Well, that was, I think we'll stop there for tonight.
Okay.
Well, good night. So, this is a story all about Mather and the drones. Well, as you'll recall, yesterday was due to Lightning McQueen's drone pilot license that he was able to sit down and find out where Mather was and save Mather from certain ruin being lost over the cliff in the middle of a desert where nobody could reach him because there's no way of knowing where he'd gone. Well, when Mather got back, of course, he had to go into Doc's garage because Doc had to fix him up. Well, Doc got him up there on the hoist, and he tinkered, and he pounded, and he twisted, and he put ports on, zzz, 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 and put new ports on, click, 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 click. And then when it pounded a little bit more, bang, 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 bang. And then went zzz, a little bit more, and then went brrr. And guess what? Pretty soon all the parts were fixed, but Doc said, well, not Mather, do you want to have your paint job done? And Mather said, I don't think so. I've been this color and it looked like this for the longest time, and I don't think people would recognize me if I had all that new paint on me. Besides, I kind of feel comfortable like this. It's kind of me being dusty out in the desert. It suits me. Well, have it your way, said Doc. Down went the hoist. Clunk. There was Mather on the ground. Well, Mather hadn't said anything to anybody, but he had been thinking the whole time we'd been up on the hoist, he was saying, imagine that. Lightning McQueen got his drone license. I wonder what would happen if I got my drone license, and what would I do with it? Well, he very quietly went around and started talking to people, and they were all talking about how, of course, Lightning McQueen had his basic drone pilot license. And when Mather looked around and dug around and did a little bit of research on the internet, he found, hey, well, that's only the basic. But if I got an advanced one, I could do all kinds of things. And then he thought of himself, oh, I could be the hero. I could do things that nobody else would do. Yes. So he dreamed about it, and he dreamed about it, and then he thought, oh, I got to stop dreaming, and I got to start doing. So when nobody would be looking, he'd get on the internet, and he'd go to the Transport Canada website, and he'd check all the information, and then he'd go to the FAA website, and he'd check all the information, and once he got all the information done, he said, okay, I think I'm ready for my basic license. Well, when nobody was looking, in the middle of the night, he took his license. He went and did it. Well, he'd studied very hard, but it had been a long time since he'd been to school, and he passed with 70%. He said, 70%, why, that's good enough to get the basics. But then he realized, oh, if I want to get an advanced, I do the advanced test, it's going to be shorter, and I have to get 80%. I've got to even learn better. So he sat down, didn't tell anybody he had his basic license, but he studied again. He went back and found out where he'd made mistakes, and he learned more about it. And then he turned around and said, okay, I think I'm going to start studying for my advanced test. Well, he did the very same thing, and he worked for 2 or 3 weeks learning all the things and writing things down on cards saying, okay, these are the 10 points I've got to remember, and this is what this means, and this is what it means, and this is how you write a map, and this is all the symbols and all the rules. And well, finally the day came when he woke up and he said, I am ready. And he went over to the computer, he turned it on, signed on, he had a special account now. And are you ready? It said, yes, commence. And he pushed the start button and the counter started counting down by the seconds. He turned around and he started doing questions. Well, he was really prepared this time, and he found that most of the questions he could get pretty quickly. And the ones that he didn't, he said, well, I'll put them aside and come back and check them later. Well, he got through, how many questions are there in the advanced?
I think
70?
about 50 or 70.
Okay. Because 70 would be twice what the basics were.
Somewhere in between there.
Okay, well, what would you like it to be, 50 or 70?
70.
70, well, there he was going through, and he went through about 60 of them pretty quickly, and the rest he kind of had to puzzle his little head over. But he sat down and managed to get most of them done. There were 2 or 3 that he just couldn't figure out. He said, well, I'm going to just leave those. And he went back and he very carefully proofread all his answers. He said, oh, I should have said this and that here. Oh, I should have said that, then this. And he corrected 2 or 3 of his sentences, and he set it in. And then he waited. And it seemed like it was forever he was waiting. He was sitting there tapping his fingers on the table. And all of a sudden, bing! The screen light up and said, congratulations, you passed. You got 82%. And he said, well, that's it. I am now fully an advanced drone pilot. But he said, wait a minute, what am I going to do with it? He hadn't thought of that part at all. I mean, Connor knew that you should think about things before you get your advanced license, so you'd have a goal in mind. And not only that, so that you'd be able to sit down and say, well, these are the important things that I have to learn. They're all important, but if I'm going to be doing, for instance, bridge inspections, I'm going to have a little bit of a different skill set than if I'm doing something like surveying forests. Well, he thought about it for a while, and then he realized what he really wanted to do was go and do search and rescue. Just like him, he said, I got rescued. I think I should turn around and help people with getting rescued. But he said, I'm going to get a big drone to do this. Well, he went and researched the drones, and then he went and looked at his bank account. Of course, he lived out in the desert, and he wasn't very expensive to live in. He hadn't spent any money on big fancy houses or on anything. He didn't even get a new paint job when Doc was asking. So he had quite a bit of money in the bank. And he went online and he found exactly the drone that he wanted to get. It was a really big drone. And it was a drone that was capable of lifting 250 kilograms. That's a lot of weight. He said, that's what I'm going to need. He said, if I get that much, I can sit down and I can pick up all kinds of things. I can pick up people and I can pick up, it'd be very useful. So he sent away for it. Well, it took a little while to get there because it had to come all the way from China. And not only that, it was there were problems with the supply chain, and they were loading them onto the dock in China. They go, ho, so patati, ho, ho, and they loaded it on clunk. And they were saying to themselves they were saying, holy mackerel, this is heavy. I wonder what it is. And it's going to somebody called Mather. Who was a name like Mather? Anyway, they all had a laugh and they said, well, goodbye. And off the ship went across the ocean. And then it came close to the American side. Came into the port of Los Angeles, and that's the water splashing against the dock. And they tied the boat up. They had the hawsers out, and they tied them out. Man, and then the big cranes came along, and they went this way. They picked it up, and they put it on a big flatbed truck that was just there with its engine idling. Well, of course, they were still using ice engines then, but little did they know that was all going to change in a few years. There weren't going to be big, noisy diesel engines anymore around. Well, off he went with his big package on the back, all in a big, huge crate. And he went out of California, and he went into the Nevada desert, and then he went over to, is it in Nevada or Arizona?
Arizona.
Over to Arizona, and then he went out to the Mesa countries, and he was going through Monument Valley and looking at drivers saying, "Oh, this is beautiful! Look at all these beautiful things." It's just like the old Western movies. Well, they got to the little town that he lived in. Was it Flagstaff?
Radiator Springs.
Radiator Springs, yes. He said, that's such a podunk little town, it was hardly on the map. It's actually, some of the maps say, defunct, ghost town, no longer here, keep going, go away, we don't want any. But anyway, he did find it, and he drove in, and he was quite surprised. He said, "Why, this is a nice little town. There's a nice little cafe over there. I think I'm going to have my lunch. And look, there's a nice little motel here. I think maybe I could stay here and have a sleep tonight here." And then he saw there was Doc's Garage. It said, "Doc's Garage, all makes and models of trucks and motors serviced and repaired. You know, proprietor Doc Hudson." Well, he said, "This is about the kind of place I'd like to stay. I don't think this is too podunky at all." So he went over to he said, "I don't know where anybody is here, but I'm going to go to the post office and find out." So he went over and he said, "Hi there, could you tell me where Mather is? I got a package for him." And he said, "Oh, you got to go down the road a piece and make a left-hand turn, then go up the hill, and when you hit the fork, take the right hand and follow the trail all the way along, and you'll find that he's right close to the end. You can tell he's there because you'll hear the chickens going because he got a lot of chickens because he likes eggs. Oh yes." Well, the truck driver got back and backed up his car. He had a bite to eat first. He said, "I'll be back. By the way, I want to reserve a room." He went over to the hotel and to the motel, and he reserved what he thought was the nicest room. It had a beautiful view overlooking a valley, and he said, "I'm going to see the most beautiful sunsets, and look way in the distance, there's some mountains. That's a beautiful view." So once he had that all straight, he got in the truck, went down the road, turned left along a piece, got to the junction, turned right, went up right to very close to the end. And there was Mather's ranch, kind of run down, kind of looks like a bunch of little huts. But he pulled up in front, and he got out, went the brakes. Well, of course, Mather, as soon as he heard that, he knew who would come. He came out from behind the chicken coop and said, "Hi, you got a delivery for me?" He said, "Yes, sir. Are you Mather?" "Yes." "Well, here, sign here." He said, "Well, you're going to help me take it off?" He said, "Yes, I got a big hoist on the back." And so he had a hoist. He turned around, and as Mather did the paperwork, the driver went in and activated the hoist and went, "Woo," and picked up the big pack, "Woo," and put it down the ground. "Woo." He said, "Okay, I gotta be on my way, but enjoy it, whatever it is." It certainly was heavy. And he still hadn't told anybody that he had a secret drone. Well, off he went down all the way, down the road, back the hill, to Radiator Springs, stopped off, had another cup of coffee and a delicious supper with a really nice piece of pecan pie for dessert, and a couple of cups of coffee. He said, "I hope I'm not up all night because of the coffee, but I really love my coffee." That's what he said, because he was from that part of the country where they don't say coffee, they say coffee. Well, meanwhile, back at Mather's little spread, he quickly undid all the straps that were around it, the steel straps. He got his little cutting knife, bing, bing, bing. He cut all the steel straps off, and then he started hammering away, pang, 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 pang. He took off the wooden sides, and they all fell plop, 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 plop. And there was the drone with a big box of instructions. It looked shiny and red. He said, "Oh, I love the color red. He said, just like Lightning McQueen. That's going to make Lightning McQueen so jealous when he sees my beautiful new drone. Well, first thing he had to do was put in the batteries, and there were big batteries. I mean, he could just, you think a drone, a small drone has got big batteries, is it? Big batteries. Well, it took him a while. It took about 8 or 9 hours to get them all juiced up. And he had extra ones. He said, I better get these ones charged too. There he went and plugged them in, and he had a whole, all across the yard. He had these extension cords out, and they were all plugged into these chargers. Well, 6, 7, 8 hours went by, and all of a sudden the first ones went bing, they turned green. Well, he was all ready to go. He said, yeah, I'm all ready to go, but he said, got to put them in. And then he had to spend about half an hour figuring out how to put them in and connect them and everything, because they were not a lot, it was kind of a little complicated. But he got it all done. And then he said, okay, now I've read the instructions, I know what to do, everything's ready, you got to do a check. He did a check, everything checked out. He said, okay, stand back, it's in the clear. And he pushed the start button, and the rotors went and stopped, but they were all rigid. And he said, okay, they got the charge. He said, now I'm going to start. He activated the screen so he could see what he was looking at, and guess what? He could see himself because the camera was pointed right at him. And he said, well, he said, I'm looking a little rough. Maybe I should get my paint done. He said, I'm going to be a big movie star now. I better start thinking about myself as being presentable to the public. Well, he turned around and started improving, increasing the power, and he changed the pitch of the rotors, and it all went off, and he stopped just at eye level, and he made sure that the camera was on, and then he spun all the way around, did a 360 to take a look at the yard, and then he said, time to go up, and up he went. Went up to 400 feet. Well, of course, he was up on the top of the hill, so it was 400 feet plus the height of the hill, and he could see a long distance. Well, for the next 2 or 3 days, he just practiced taking off, turning, landing, going, charging, becoming familiar with all the operating controls. He said, well, I think I'm just ready now. He said, so he landed the drone in the back of his truck, his pickup truck, covered it with a tarpaulin, and it just fit inside. He said, I'm going to surprise everybody down in Radiator Springs. Well, down he went, down the road to the junction, and he took the road to the left and then to the right, because you go back the other way. You see, his right was left and left was right. Down to Radiator Springs. But when he got there, the whole town was in a flap. Oh no! What was going on? Well, the first thing he did, he went over to the motel. What was the name of the motel again?
Cozy Cone.
Cozy Cone Motel.
Yes, where Sally is.
Sally. And went up and said, say, Sally, this whole town is in a buzz. What's happening? Saying, oh, that's because little Tommy is lost. They don't know where he is. What do you mean he's lost? Well, he was out with the Cub Scouts, and they were all supposed to stick together, and in the excitement, they didn't check, and they don't know where he is now. And they're worried about him, because there are coyotes out there, and there are Gila monsters, and there's all kinds of things that could really, scorpions and snakes, and he could be in a lot of trouble. Well, especially at night, because that's when the snakes come out. They start coming, they start looking around for anything that's giving off heat, because they have heat sensors, because they know that if it's heat, it's alive, and if it's alive, it means it's supper. Well, everybody was rightly concerned about poor little Tommy, that's for sure. Well, either said, well, I think I can help. And everybody looked at me and said, how are we going to do that? He said, watch this. And he went over and he pulled a tarpaulin off the top, and there was the drone sitting there, bright, shiny, new red. Well, first of all, some of them didn't recognize what it was, but Lightning McQueen looked right away and said, don't tell me you got that drone. It's a Mavic 55. Wow, that's a fantastic, that's a big one. And they were just saying, and he said, but how can you fly it? You don't have a drum license. You've got to have an advanced license for that. And Mather turned around and took out his advanced drone license and said, here you go. I can fly this. I got this. He said, stand back, everybody. They all backed back, and their mouth was open. They were looking. I said, oh no, what's going to happen now? And he pushed the button, click, and the rotors went, and then he said, here we go. And he took off. He said, I've got a camera on this. Smile, everybody. You're on candid camera. And he went all the way around very slowly, and he caught everybody. And they were all looking up at the drone. It was only about 15 feet off the ground. And their mouths were all open like this. And they were all gaping. And he said, they're going to be very surprised when they see themselves with their mouth open like that. They're really surprised that I can do this. They didn't think I could. Well, he said, okay, now. He asked the troop later, where were you guys going? Well, they said, we were heading out across the desert to the hillocks over there, and we were going to go and look for agates. Well, and tell me about little Tommy. What kind of qualifications does he? Well, he's got his basic Cub Scouts. He knows how to do first aid, and he knows a little bit of semaphore, and he knows a little bit of Morse code. Well, that's good to know. He doesn't have a radio, though, and I don't have a radio, but we'll see. Well, see you later. I'll see what I can do. Well, he had a whole bunch of spares, of course, the batteries all charged up, ready to go, and he flew out, went up really high, and he turned on his infrared sensor. He hadn't told him that he had an infrared sensor which could find heat. Well, it was so hot out there that everything was just blindingly bright through the sensor. You couldn't really tell it was a person that was at 98 degrees or was it a rock that was 98 degrees. It was all just kind of bright yellow red. Well, he looked around and he said, I'm going to have to wait till it cools down, but I'm going to do a survey. So he did a big survey of the area, and at least he knew that he could see the areas where there was no rocks and nothing hidden, and he kind of was able to cross that off the list. So there was only some areas with trees in it and others with piles of rocks, and he kind of made a record on his automatic flying log where they were, so that next time he went back and landed, and they said, did you find him? No, I haven't found him because it's just too hot out there, but I did a big survey and there's only about 5% of the place that I haven't looked, and I'm going to wait for this get cool in the afternoon, the evening, and I'm going to go and find them. Well, they were a little anxious because they said, don't wait too late, because if you wait too late, all the Gila monsters and the snakes will be out and the coyotes will be going, "Howoo," and poor little Tommy's going to be so scared. Well, I'll do my best, said Mather. And he waited till it was about 4:30, and the sun was getting long, and the temperature was dropping, and once it dropped below about 90, well, say 87 degrees Fahrenheit, 86, 85, he said, now I'll be able to spot anybody that's got a breathing, living pulse with this kind of temperature. Here I go, folks. And this time he took off, and he didn't waste any time taking pictures or anything. He just flew up and off he went, and he had marked out the 6 areas that he had to check, and he had actually programmed them into his little controller. So they went to the first one, checked around, no infrared signatures of people. Next one, oh, there was an infrared signature, but when he looked, he realized it was a whole bunch of gophers. They were all playing in the sand. It couldn't be them. 3rd place, no. 4th, no. It was getting dark. 5th place, and that was a bunch of woods. And when he went in, he said, there's something, but it's up in a tree. What's that? Well, he flew really close, and he could zzz, and he realized, little Tommy, who knew what he was doing, realized he should get off the ground so that he'd be away from the Gila monsters and the rattlesnakes and the coyotes and the scorpions. And he decided he'd go spend a night in a tree because he knew his night was coming on. Well, he flew over, and Tommy looked up, and he was very frightened, but of course he had a 2-way communication system on it. He said, Tommy, don't worry, this is Mather. I'm here to save you. Mather, is that really you? Yes, I'm flying a drone. But you got to get out of that tree first and get clear of the branches. Go out in the clear and I'll pick you up and take you home. You will? Yes, I'll fly you home. Wow, well that was so exciting to little Tommy, he couldn't get out of that tree fast enough. Down he went, branch, bumpity, 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 bump, faster than Winnie the Pooh got down to the tree. And then he scrambled out and he ran out and he got about 50 or 60 meters away. He said, is this good? He said, yes. He said, now here comes, I'm going to be lowering the sling. Because he had a sling underneath. And he hovered down about, I guess about 5 meters off the ground. It was pretty breezy and little Tommy's hair was getting blown around, but he didn't care because he was going to get a ride. And it sounded really like a lot of fun. Well, he sat down in the hammock and he said, okay, now take the strap on your left. Yes, Mather, and put it into the right. Click. Now take the stop at the bottom. You see it's got a split. Well, you sit down and put one over one shoulder and one over the other. Click, click. Okay, you're fastened in on 4 points. Now, hang on to the handles. And here we go. By the way, have you ever ridden in a helicopter? No. Well, this is going to be a lot more fun than a helicopter. Well, there he went up. Oh, and of course, little Tommy was only weighed about 60 or 70 pounds. And the flight and the drone could carry 200 kilograms. So that was a lot more. That was like 550 pounds. So I had no problem picking up little Tommy. And up they went. Well, how high are we going to go? Well, we could go as high as you want, but we're up now at 50 meters. Oh, this is great. Well, he flew along for a little while, and then Tommy said, can we go higher? Mather said, yes, we can. And he went higher and said, let's go higher again. And next thing you know, he was way over the limit. He was up about 700 or 800 feet, and little Tommy was saying, let's go higher. And of course, Mather said, we can't do that. We're already outside of regulations, and if anybody spots us, I'm going to lose my license. We got to go down to 400 feet. Sorry there, little Tommy. Oh, said Tommy. But down they went to 4, and it was a nice flight. He said, now hold on to your hat. We're going to go real fast. Well, he started flying along, and they were flying so fast that the little gondola underneath was kind of swinging up behind the drone, and the drone was sort of angling forward and biting into the wind and going as fast as it could. It was going about 80 miles an hour, just 110 kilometers an hour, just flying along. Well, that was so much fun. Little Tommy could hardly believe it. This was more fun than any ride he'd ever been on. And he said, look, there's Radiator Springs. Hold on, we're going to go down now. We're going to slow down. And there in front of the Cozy Cone hotel, everybody was waiting in a big circle. And they saw Mather coming in because he had his landing lights on. Flash, 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 flash. And Doc looked and he said, I think he's got something underneath the drone. And Lightning McQueen, who had very good eyesight, said, yes, and it looks like a little boy. And then Sally said, oh, do you think it's our Tommy? And Tommy's mother said, oh, it's got to be Tommy. Oh, I hope it's Tommy. Well, he came in and they flew over the crowd and hovered for a second so everybody could see how wonderful his flying skills were. And he did a quick turnaround to be able to take the picture of everybody. And this time, instead of having their mouths open, they were just grinning ear to ear, and they were just happy as could be. And he said, stand clear now. And they all moved back, and down, down, down he went. And he set little Tommy on the ground. And Tommy's mother came running over and said, oh, Tommy, are you okay? And he said, yes, Mommy, I had the most wonderful adventure. And of course, Tommy's mother now was kind of been so worried, she'd been crying, but she got a little upset, said, how can you dare say this is fun? We were all just worried sick about you. But little Tommy sort of said to himself, oh, I better not sit down and say how much fun I had because it might get her upset. So he said, yes, Mom, I'm so glad I'm back. And then he undid the harness from the left shoulder and the right shoulder and the belt around the middle and popped up. And his mummy scooped him up, and his father was there and said, there, Tommy. And they both carried Tommy over to the car, and they whisked him home to give him a good bath and clean behind his ears and get the scent of his hair and make sure that he was nice and pink and clean, and feed him his favorite supper of shepherd's pie, and of course they had pecan pie for dessert. And that's the end of the story.
Excellent.
Well, time to give the little critters a little goodnight kiss. Hello, Mickey. Hi, Johnny. How are you doing? Well, I'm doing well. You're going to be going back soon to Halifax with Connor. Oh, yes. It was a very nice visit. It was so much fun. We did so many things. Sovereign Succotash. It's not. We did so many things and they were so much fun. And guess what? We all had chicken tonight. I love chicken. Oh, ho, ho. Well, of course you would. Sylvester, you always loved chicken. Yes, I do. Well, are you going to give us little kisses? Yes, right on the nose. Here you go, guys. Here's one for you, Minnie. And a big one for you, Sylvester. Oh. And one for you, Mickey. Oh. Now, let's, right between your ears. I know you like getting tickled there. Oh, yes, oh, yes. And all the way down and all the way to your tail. There we go. Oh, that's so nice to get my backstroke. Oh, it makes me feel so calm and relaxed. Yes, I like that too. I like going all the way to the bottom of my tail. Well, let's do that then. Where's your tail? You're hiding your tail. Okay, here we go. I like it when to pull my tail. It makes me all alive. You're such a silly cat. Well, but I still love you. And I love you too, Mickey. Well, my turn now. Yes, between the ears and all the way down my back. Oh, yes. Oh, it's so, I feel so great. Now, where's Eldon? Oh, here's Eldon. Here comes Eldon. Eldon doesn't want to miss out on the little hugs. Okay, there you go, guys. Big hug now. Oh, it's so nice. Oh, I feel so safe and secure. Oh, I feel very happy. We all do. Yes, we do. And I feel great too. Okay, guys, here you go. Sleep well. Don't cause any trouble. Be good little critters. Good night. Good night. Well, it's the 30th of November, 2021. Got to get my date straight. And here we are getting ready to tell Connor a good night story. And tomorrow he'll be getting in the plane and he'll be flying back by Porter Airlines all the way to Halifax. So this is my last chance to tell him a story. Tonight he wants a story about Thomas skiing in Jasper. But he doesn't know that I got a little surprise in the story that I've thought of. Anyway, back on the island of Sodor, it was a very hot fall. It was so hot in fact that the rails were starting to get all bendy and weavy, and they had maintenance crews out there all the time, sort of straightening them out and making sure that there was no problems at all with switches. Well, it was so hot that Thomas said to James, "Oi, I think I'd like to have a nice cool holiday somewhere. Oh yes, it would be so nice to go away to the mountains, up in the air, yes, somewhere where it was nice and cool." Well, James said, "Well, if you were up in the mountains, you could also go skiing." "What a wonderful idea," said Thomas. "Well, could I come along too?" said Gordon. "Well, of course you can." So the three of them started planning for a trip somewhere in the mountains, but they didn't know where. Well, they knew they had some holiday coming to them. So the next time they saw the Fat Controller, or Sir Topham Hatt, they said to him, "Oi, sir, we have some holiday time coming for us, and we were thinking of going somewhere in the mountains." "Well," said Sir Topham Hatt, "that reminds me, I know of a wonderful place where you could go into the mountains. It's a place called Jasper." "Jasper?" "Yes, it's in Alberta in Canada. They have beautiful mountains there. They're just wonderful. And they have snow there at this time of year. You could go skiing." "Skiing?" said James. "I would love to go skiing." "So would I," said Gordon. "I've never been skiing in my life." Well, of course, Thomas thought, yes, it would be great. So they quickly got together, they phoned up the airport, and they arranged to have a flight first to all the way from, the name of the airport there is Dunham Field?
I think it's just called Sodor Airport.
Sodor Airport, all the way to London. And then in London, they were so excited they were able to get into a big transport plane because they were big engines. And the big transport plane said, "Oh, hi, how are you doing? I come from Canada. I'm going to be flying you over there." Well, everybody was so excited. There was the press was down there and taking photographs. It's so unusual to see 3 locomotives being loaded into a super huge transport and being flown across the ocean to Canada. Well, of course, it took a little while for that plane to get off the ground and go all the way down to the very end of the runway, and then turn around and rev its engines up and keep its brakes on. And when its engines were just shaking, they were going so fast to let go of the brakes and started rumbling down the runway and then up into the air, up, up, up. Well, they had so much fun looking out the little windows that they had that they didn't realize how quickly the time had gone. And next thing you knew, they were flying over a city with some beautiful buildings in it, and there was one that had a big tall spire. "Well, look at that," said James. "Oh, I wonder what that is. It's a huge tower." "Yes," said Thomas. "I wonder." "Well," said Gordon, "I know what that is. That's a CN Tower, and it's named after the Canadian Pacific Telecommunications Company that used to be around and built that." Well, they were so excited to hear that it was they were going to be going to a place where there was a Canadian National Railway telecommunications tower. They could hardly wait to get off the plane. And well, I guess they got on the tracks, because now the tracks went all the way for the express, all the way from the airport downtown. And that's what they did. They 1, 2, 3 got on. First there was Thomas, then there was James, and then there was Gordon, and they all went chugging along, chug, 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 to the center of the city. And it was there, of course, the press was there. They were taking photographs of the three engines from Britain that had come over by plane and were going out to Jasper. Well, everybody had a big party for them that night, but they got to bed early because they had a long trip to go. And what they did was next morning they got up, and the tracks had been cleared for them, and they had deposits of coal. There was just enough coal for them to get to Jasper and back. And they'd been positioned all the way along the road, the railroad. They started out, of course, there was a lot of smoke coming out, and the people had forgotten how smoky the steam engines were. But they loved the sound of the whistles. Well, they went first, they got to Sault Ste. Marie, and then they had to coal again. And then from there they went to Winnipeg, and then they had to coal again. And from there then they went to Saskatoon, they coaled again, and then all the way to Edmonton. Well, Edmonton was the last coal station before they hit the Rockies. They stayed overnight, and they had a chance to go and talk to the people that were there. There were so many people that had showed up, wanted to take pictures and have selfies with the 3 engines. All the little children were there, and of course their fathers were there, and their mothers were there, and they brought along their doggies, and everybody. It was just a great big happy gathering of people looking and smiling and taking pictures. Well, the next morning they started out very early. They went all the way to Jasper. Well, Jasper was a very pretty little town. They were very surprised, but they were even more surprised when they looked out and they saw the huge mountains around. Big mountains. Well, they'd never seen anything like that in their life. And they looked up, and there was the top of the mountains. Yes, there was snow. Well, how are we going to get up there? There's no tracks. Well, I have an idea, said James. And he went and he quickly put a phone call in, and he phoned the Ski-Doo club that was there, the snowmobile club, and said, "Look, we've got 3 engines that need to be taken up to the top of the mountain. Can you do it?" And they said, "Yes, we can." So the snowmobile club that had over 200 snowmobiles, all the people got together and they built a big wooden sleigh, a runner, like a big toboggan, and they put the 3 engines on, and then the snowmobiles got lined up like dogs in a sled team, and they started pulling that heavily laden, big, huge toboggan up the mountain, onto the snow, and up all the way. Well, they got to the top, and they were just so surprised. They were a little cold, but they very soon got warm because there was a special big shed there. It was for, they used to keep equipment in there, like tractors and mowers and harvesting equipment for logs and stuff. And it was just the right size for the 3 of them. And it was nice and warm and dry. Well, at that point, Thomas said, "I have another surprise for you." "What is it?" said, "What is it?" said James. "Yes, I'd like to know," said Gordon. "I brought along my drone." "A drone? You have a drone?" "Yes, and I know how to fly it. I took my course and I am all set." Well, they could hardly wait the next day to go out, because they put the camera on it and they took turns sliding down the mountain and then going on the chairlift and going back up again, and getting pictures of what they looked like when they were slaloming this way and turning that way and swooshing this way on skis, big, big, huge skis that they had made for them. Well, then, all of a sudden, they heard somebody say, oh no, he's lost, he's lost." "What's that?" said Thomas. "Oh, somebody's in trouble," said James. "It sounds like it," said Gordon. Well, they went over, and there was a mother, and she was very upset. She said, "My little Jimmy has gone away. Where is he? I don't know where he is. He could be anywhere. He's out in the mountains. It's very dangerous out there." Well, at that point, of course, Thomas said, "I will get my drone. I will find him." And he went quickly back to the shed, got the drone out, started it up, and way up in the air it went. Well, the other 2 engines were very surprised to see it fly. They didn't know that he had a drone license. They just found out on this trip. Yes, and up he went high in the air, and he flew this way and that way, and he could see down at the bottom of the hill there was a little red parka. He thought, "Oh, the snow isn't red. That must be little Jimmy." And he guided the drone down there, and that's exactly where it was. Little Jimmy had gone on his little skis and had taken a wrong turn and was going down. They had gone all the way down the hill and couldn't stop. And he said, "Oh, no, 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 I'm going down. Oh, they'll never find me." But Thomas was able to find him. Well, as soon as Thomas knew where they were, he radioed back to the rescue people, and the ski patrol got out immediately, and they got on their ski. They put on their skis because they couldn't take, it was a very dangerous mountain. They couldn't take their ski-doos down there because the sound might start an avalanche. But they put on their skis and down they went, sliding this way and that way and having a wonderful time. They found exactly where Jimmy was because the drone was still flying overhead and was able to tell them exactly where to go. They picked up little Jimmy, dusted him off. He was a little bit cold, but he was okay, and he was a little frightened too because he thought, "Oh, I'll never get back to see my mummy." Well, the ski patrol said, "Don't worry, little Jimmy, you're safe now." And they skied back up the mountains, and there was everybody in the lodge waiting. Jimmy's mother, and of course Gordon and Thomas and James and the manager of the hotel and all the guests, and they saw little Jimmy being taken back by this ski patrol. They all cheered. They all, well, it was so, everybody was so excited that they threw a big party, and they had birthday cake, and they had a band playing, and it was just, everybody was just having so much fun, and they partied until way late in the night. And then finally Thomas said, "Oh, it's been a long trip over here, and I need to get some rest. I think I'm going to go to bed now." And the others said, yes, me too, said James and Gordon. So they said bye to Jimmy and to the party. They said, you keep on partying now. They went back to their wonderful shed, and guess what? It was all fixed up even better than the night before. They went in and they shut the door and they said, well, what a wonderful first day. I wonder what we'll be doing tomorrow. I wonder, said Thomas. I don't know, said James. We'll just have to wait and find out, said Gordon. And that's the end of the story.
Excellent.
Time to give the critters a kiss. Yes, the nightly kiss for the little critters. Okay, there's Mickey, there's Sylvester, and there's Minnie. And they're all lined up waiting for their kiss. And of course there's Eldon, can't forget him. I'm going to put him right in front on. Now, here we go. Oh, yeah, were you guys good today? Oh, we were very good. Oh, suffer and succotash. We were better than good. We were excellent. I'm so glad to hear that. We had a wonderful day too, and we did some very interesting things. But now it's time to go to sleep. So here are your kisses. Mm, 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 mm. And you too, Eldon. And tickle in between the ears. Oh yes. Down the back. There you go. And same with you, Sylvester. In between the ears. Down you go. Oh, right to the tail. Oh, I really like that. And of course you too, Mickey. Here you go. All the way down to your tail. Are you guys happy now? Oh yes, we're very happy. Thank you very much for the wonderful visit that we all had. We were so happy to come and see you. Well, I was really happy to see you guys too. And you too, Eldon. And I'm so glad to see you're still around. Because you are as old as Connor. You wouldn't believe it, but you are. Okay. Okay, here, all you guys. Good night.